Brenda, welcome to the podcast.
How are you?
I'm doing great today. How are you doing down there?
I am doing good down here. It's muggy and hot, but I don't complain because we got something we call air conditioning.
If you could tell our listeners what your life looks like now as an artist and how you arrived here. So talk about your process a little bit and what things look like for you as an artist. Are you a full-time artist? What are you doing right now?
Yes, I am a full-time artist now. Now, it took me, as my folks from North Carolina used to say, about 45 years or something to say that I am an artist. That was very difficult to say because artists can draw. Therefore, if I can't draw, I can't be an artist. But what I found I could do was smear paint around on a canvas, and then the paint starts talking to me. Now, the paint starts talking to me if I listen. But Caroline, I think I'm getting ahead of myself because I want to go back to how I got to the point of the paint even deciding to speak to Brenda. I grew up in a little town called Lakewood. Now, the name of the town in North Carolina was Lakewood. I was a little brown girl running up and down the gravel streets, barefoot. Gravel did not hurt back then when you're young. It felt good. I didn't have any idea really what an artist was. There were no, we lived, I would say it was in the country compared to how it is now. We lived, I wouldn't call it suburbs. We lived in the country. We lived in the country. I don't know if there was a museum. I know there was no museum in the town that I lived in Lakewood. I did not know of any artists, or maybe if I did, it was from the library where you see the books about Brer Rabbit and Little Black Sambo or something like that, and someone drew some little brown and black figures on it. That was art, I guess, I don't know. But what I did realize in the last 15, 20 years is that I was surrounded by, and I don't want to use the word tribe because that word has been killed. I was surrounded by, I'm going to say spirits and people that were artists and did not know it. These artists were, and I'm going to basically say the women, my grandmother, my great grandmother, my mother, and all the women in our family. These women, they canned, they sewed, they cooked, they baked, they grew gardens. So their artistry came out, some people would call it in their craftsmanship, but they were artists with fabric, they were artists with flowers, and they were artists with flower bags. I'm saying flower bags because there was a flour mill in Fillcrest Mills was there. Fillcrest Mills made sheeting and things. That was the main industry back then. But there was also a flour mill where you went to get flowers that was in a flour sack. And my mother and grandmother, that's how they made these beautiful dresses. You know, the dresses like maybe they're blue with little tiny flowers, or I don't really remember. They didn't put the writing saying flower XXX across the front, but they were made out of flour sacks. The dresses were, and their aprons were made out of these flour sacks. So they were tailors, they were dressmakers, they were cooks. So they were women who they were able to take nothing and make something. If you could say, look back when you were a kid, who did you admire? Oh, I admired the people that I looked up to that were raising me. It's one thing, when I got out of high school, we had moved to Ohio by then. I graduated on a Friday, and then they'll say, well, Monday, you got to go to work. Now, no one ever thought about the fact that you should enjoy what you do. I would have never thought, no one I knew went to work happy and knowing that that's their life, that's fulfillment to go and do this, this, and this. You went to work washing people's clothes, ironing their clothes, working in the fields. That's not what I call bringing joy to what you do. So you get the first job out of high school that comes your way. And you think it's supposed to stay there, of course, for the rest of your life. It's not like it is now. So I had all these ideas in my head, but these ideas had to take a back place in my life because I had to go to work. I went to work at jobs, which I wouldn't even want to tell you about those jobs. The most recent one before I retired, though, was for Big Brothers Big Sisters, where I worked matching mentors with boys and girls. And I would do workshops to the volunteers. And that's when I thought about the idea of loving what you do, because I would do the workshops for the people who came to volunteer. And the main thing that they wanted to do was to help some little girl or boy. They want to help them get out of their situation, help them do this, help them do that. And I learned, and I hope I impressed upon them the fact that they, as a volunteer, would get more out of this relationship than the little. They were littles and bigs and the little, because you're coming with a need. You're not coming just because you woke up that day and decided, I'm going to go do this. You came because you had a need and this child helped to fulfill that need. So in essence, really, you're getting more out of it than the little is. After Christmas, because Big Brothers Big Sisters was down the street from a big department store in Cleveland, Ohio, I would go down and buy the angels. I would buy they were big angels, paper mache big angels. And I worked with the woman who told me, her mother told her that there was no such thing as Black angels. She believed that. Now, there's no way I believe that. And I couldn't convince her it was not that. And I wasn't doing what I was doing to convince her of that. I was doing this for people that I gave these angels to. I would buy the paper mache angels and I would paint them. I would paint them and I would paint their clothes and everything. And then I would give them. And I just ran across a woman like 6 or 7 months ago. And I gave her this angel, say 20, 30 years ago. She told me she still had that angel and still pulls it out at Christmas time and sets it around her tree, even though you can buy angels now. But something like that, when someone appreciates and sees what you do, made that fire rekindle, that dreaming spirit that I had. But eventually that little flame kept flaming in the back of my brain, telling me that I could do more. But I think I'm doing great with what I'm doing. So I was afraid of, Caroline, I was afraid of a white canvas. That's fear. So that's why, I started off with half a page to make a little greeting card. That's how I was doing. That big canvas scared me to death. Took me a long time to get up to that size. But from working on a page in a book, I used to teach altered book workshops also. That's where you can create art, you take the words, say, and circle them to make a poem or something like that. Or you put your own visions in the book. Like my first book was called Jumping for Joy, but I just renamed it What Gives Me Joy. And that's where I put in all these things that gave me joy, like little girls with bows in their hair, with all their little braids sticking out, things that made me laugh. And I still have that book. And so eventually I got enough nerve to tear that page out of the book and put it on a canvas. And I put it on the canvas and I glued it down. Okay, so I've got something on the canvas. And then I just took paint and smeared it around. And when I see it and allow myself to listen to my intuition, to listen to what the paint is telling me, and just get Brenda out of the way is what I do. I get Brenda out of the way. That was joy. That was doing something like, I'm saying, you go to work, whoever thought you should enjoy what you do? And see, with no Instagram and Facebook like in the early 90s and the mid 90s. So I relied more on myself rather than looking at IG and seeing what everybody else is doing. Brenda had to just listen to what the spirit was telling her and keeping herself out of the way, because that's when it's hard. When I'm painting, and if I try to force my will, because I start out sometimes thinking I can start out and I'm going to paint this woman and this dog right here. But it might end up being something totally different because that's what I wanted to do, but Spirit had something else it wanted me to do. And I can do that, and I can be so surprised about what turns out. So for years I did that, and I did not even try to sell my paintings. I have a type A daughter, a type A son, and a type A husband. I needed someone to talk to about my paintings. I had no one to talk to about my paintings. So I would still, that didn't stop me in the middle of a football game or whatsoever. I'd go in there and say, look at this, look at this, look at this. All right, okay. Yeah, what you gonna do with it? I don't have an answer of what I'm gonna do with it. I did it. That's what I'm gonna do with it. I did it, and I'm gonna put it up here, and I'm gonna look at it. That's what I did. And for years, I did that. I did not try to sell my paintings. That was when I was in Ohio and when I came down here. In full-time in 09, but I started coming in 08. And, we moved to a new place. It's hard to find your people. So I did call up an artist group to tell them I wanted to join them, but they asked me what type of art did I do? And they said, do you do oil painting, pen and ink, or watercolor? I said, I do mixed media. They said, well, I'll tell you what, you go take some lessons and then you give us a call back then. Now, I haven't called them back yet. I just kept painting how I paint. So that's how I started. But we joined a church down here. And we got a new minister that moved here from Janesville, Wisconsin. His name is Reverend Wesley Bixby. Wesley Bixby paints with words. And we have a choir director. We have beautiful songs that we sing. And then when Reverend Bixby, I don't want to say preaches, because he teaches and he paints with his words. I go home and I might sleep on it or whatever, and then I can paint something to the words that he used in his sermon. So when you ask me, how did I first get started and how did I first get my collectors? They were through my faith community.
So from that point on, then, how did you you sell your art regularly, right? Mm-hmm. How did you go about selling, marketing your art, promoting yourself, both in person and online, or do you go through galleries? Tell me about that.
Okay. So did I find my collectors or did they find me? That's the question. I think it was a mutual attraction for all of us. I really do. Because I did the art, but they were connected to the art. That's the main thing. So that's how I sell my art. It's through connections. And I sell whatever, if you want a flamingo or beautiful landscape or whatsoever, I can recommend an artist that you should go to paint that. That is not me. That's not what I do. But my art attracts the people who want to be connected with humanity. And you cannot connect with being human without being around other humans. Now, I think Bishop Tutu may have said that, and I paraphrase it somewhere, because I heard it somewhere, but it has resonated with me. Because being asked to be on this show, I have been writing. I've started doing my morning and my evening pages because I have been writing profusely. And so you can't be, even though we get around people, especially after we've been 2 years locked down with COVID, because my daughter and I went to a comedy show, and I said, these people are loud in here and noisy. She said, it has people in it, Mom. I said, oh yeah, you're right. But we can't not be people or humans if we are alone. Now, I love being alone. That's what I did. Like, I thought I liked that before COVID, but once you had to be in your house, I wanted to get out and go somewhere then. But I really basically like to paint. So my collectors and I found each other. Now, okay, so I got these collectors at my church. They tell other people. I would enter juried shows at art centers in the town that I live in. I entered juried shows. And of course, the first couple of times, they didn't know me and I didn't get in. But I started getting into the juried shows. And then I would apply to, like I said, call for artists. That's really how I did it within the town. Like the first time the call for artists was at a playhouse theater, a theater. So they had these long hallways, and they want artists to, fill up their lobbies and their hallways, really. So this was basically one of my first times out in a big venue. I sold 14 paintings that night. And when I say maybe not 14 different paintings, but every time someone would buy one, they would ask me to bring another one in. Now, the painting that sold and that still sells the most for me is this one that's called Why Can't We Be Friends? Why can't we get along? People who saw a variation of this painting wanted that connection with other people. And in the last, 8 or 9 years, they want a connection with a diverse community of people. Because I noticed who was buying my paintings then. And it wasn't who I thought would buy my paintings. These people come from a town in Kansas. She has been one of my biggest collectors. We have a large Amish community here in Sarasota. So the Amish and the Mennonite people buy my paintings. So along with that, and my church family and some of my friends, I had my first show at this playhouse. I went behind my couch and the bed and everywhere and brought all these paintings down. We hung them all up and down you can understand, some of my paintings had never been outside of my house. To see them lined up there with their eyes twinkling, oh, that was a wonderful feeling. And then that night when I sold like 14 paintings, and one painting was another painting that I had just done. And it was a painting that had a dress, and I had made the dress out of tissue. I had been crying, and I used that tissue with the tears to make her dress. That's how I sell the paintings. If I can get there and do an artist talk or talk to people and tell them my story, I can sell my paintings. I'm standing there crying. I was crying. And then someone will say they want to buy it. And then I start with my remorse stuff. I mean, not that I feel unworthy of you having my painting, but I'm feeling unworthy. I knew it was a good painting, but I just had not had enough time with it. But I let it go because she was a person from my church. And she lives in town, so I knew I would get to see it. Now, when I had this exhibition at this playhouse, I probably didn't even put it on Facebook. I wasn't on Instagram then. I didn't want to go on Instagram. So I think I put it in my church bulletin. That's what I did. Church bulletin. And the playhouse probably had it on their website or something like that. That was it. But my church showed up. And they showed up. I mean, like 30, 40 something people in that whole bit. So they come out like that. And so I did not know that people did not sell that many paintings in because I have done some now where maybe you sell one or something like that, but I didn't know that that was not a thing to do that. But it's the stories. And so that was the end of the year. So the next year, I had a show in January, February, and then March, April, I had a show, stay for 2 months. The places are, one is a retirement home. Now, the retirement home, it works because the people who live there are not necessarily buying, but they get lots of visitors. They get visitors, and I did an artist talk. And if I would meet somebody, and so like I sold a couple, and they told somebody else, and I would meet them over at it's a beautiful retirement home, honey. It's gorgeous on the water and everything. And I would meet people there and talk to them about each piece of my art. That's what I would do. And that's how I sold them, by telling my stories. And they responded to my stories. But then later on, I would sell some online, and someone from Battle Creek, Michigan, I think, somewhere up there near Kellogg country, where I think you're from. And I just asked I wanted to know what attracted you to my paintings. And what she said was, she wanted to have a home her children grew up in that had diverse paintings in it. She didn't want to have all of one type of painting, or one group, or one race, or whatever. She wanted a diversity of art in her home. And I think in this day and age, that speaks to a lot of people. So I am satisfying a need, and my art speaks to them. Now, at that retirement home, I sold 26 paintings in 1 month. Yes, I did. Because when I would take it they had to stay up for the whole time. And then I would take the paintings to them afterwards. Now, when I take a painting, I take other paintings with me, because maybe I know I have something. Now, I don't have a studio or somewhere I'm talking at this time or whatever. I know some other of my paintings that will go with it. And I'm looking at their house, and they got wall space. So I take these paintings with me. So I had delivered 2 paintings in her area. And then I got to her house, and she had these she had walls. And I said, I brought these along just to see how they would look and whatever. And I put them up. She bought all 5 of them.
Wow.
And another person, I took my box of paintings. This is from the same show now. The wife came 2 or 3 times to look at them. First, she'd come with her daughter. Then she would come with her husband. Her husband and her never liked the same thing, because he liked landscapes and flowers. And I told him, you got to go find yourself a landscaper, because that's not what I do. And he was embarrassing her eventually, because he kept talking about what he didn't want. Okay. But she knew what she did want. And he got to live with her, right? So I said, tell you what, I'll bring my paintings over your house and I'll leave them there. And that's what I did. So they bought 9 paintings.
Wow.
Home. Yes, they did. So, and it's hard to tell, I really didn't tell people this, because, everybody ain't happy for you. So I didn't know what to do with that information and whatever. But when if I get a chance to tell my stories, because I don't have nobody talk about my stories too in my house. So I get out. I remember I had back surgery around the time that I did that first one at the Playhouse, and I was in pain. But when I was there talking about my paintings, I didn't hurt one bit. I didn't. I'm talking, having a good time. I paid for it, but that was a little bit later. But
there's some interesting things you said in here. I would like to just reinforce.
Okay.
You said that the people who bought your paintings or who buy your paintings aren't always the people that you expect to be who is going to buy your paintings. So that's interesting. And not making assumptions, I think it's important to know who your target audience is, but also being open to not ruling anybody out either.
True. Very true.
So that would mean remaining open to venues that you may not have thought of. And I think that's very helpful. What you did, you ended up showing. How did you end up finding that retirement home?
Well, it's a very big retirement home down here, but that's only one. You know what I'm saying? They look for things for the people who live there.
Did you say that you saw an ad for a show down there that it was at
Yes,
the home?
I did.
So that's how you got in?
Right. They have a gallery. I knew because I read the artsy type things and I would see they have a gallery and who's showing there and the whole bit. And it was in a call for artists type thing.
Okay.
Call for artists. Like right now, the summer is slow. So I didn't want to do July. I want to concentrate on doing something else, which I don't know what it is yet because it's still ruminating around in my head. But they look for ways they want to decorate their walls when their visitors come, because they'll be attracted to their living spaces over there and they'll come in there and maybe buy and live. That's what, and they did not take a percentage of the paintings.
Really?
No, they did not.
I'm gonna go show in that gallery.
And they hung it. They have a committee of, arts committee for the retirement home and whatever. It's a big it would have to be a big one. When I mean, not a tiny one, because they wouldn't, and it's who visits them too. I only sold one painting to someone who lived there, and men buy my art. That's when I said by who my target audience is, and I would most likely think it's women, but it's probably 40% men.
Do they buy it for women as gifts?
Yes, they buy it. This one man bought it.
Okay.
Who bought that one at that retirement home was for him or for his business. It might have been for his business because he did mention that. But yes, they do buy it for the women, for his wife. One guy sat beneath a painting of mine of a little girl in a blue dress. And he emailed me from the place that that little girl was showing and said, "You don't know me, but blah, blah, blah. But I want to buy that." He wanted to do it on installments too. Now, I did not know this man, but I Googled the heck out of him the whole bit. And he sent me checks and he got it. And I met him and his wife, and we're good friends now and everybody. But it's because it reminded him of what his wife was like when she was a little girl, and he knew she would love it. Oh. And so he bought it for that one man. Oh, but I got to tell you another story. In the same month, why it was 26, one man bought 6 paintings, and it was one of these paintings. Now, his wife had died at the beginning of that year. So he came over to our house, and I showed him this painting. And I'm telling him about what it meant, how we're all connected, even though you may look like you have it all together, but everyone has these raggedy threads that hang from them that get intertwined with other people, and that we are all more alike than different, that we're all humans. We all have the same DNA. And I kept on talking. And so finally he said to my husband, "Won't you tell him to be quiet so I could buy the painting?" But he ended up buying 3 more paintings because he wanted to give his daughter, each one of them, one of the paintings. See, his wife had passed. So something about those paintings, a painting reminded him of his wife also. And he wanted to give each one of his daughters one.
Wow. So, now you've mentioned a couple times that painting, you said one of these. Do you make multiple originals then, as opposed to selling prints?
Of this one, yes.
Okay, because that's a popular painting.
Yes, because, or if I here lately, I've started making prints, maybe during COVID, because you're trying to bring the price down, right, so there's something for everybody. But when I get a print, you know what I do? And I got some prints. You see those 2 blue ones behind me right there on the shelf? They're both prints because I've sold the originals. And I love them. Those are prints. But what will I do? I'll go, because I love texture. My paintings are full of texture. I go in and paint over them and paint and add. I don't know if you can see this, but you know what this is? This is from my palette. I peel up my palette. And I said, "That's too pretty." So then I'll glue it onto That's
So
what makes,
are all the works, are they all acrylic?
yes, they're
Okay.
all acrylic, a mixed media with pencil or pens, Posca pens or something like that. But those two in the red and orange right there, they have not been touched yet because I haven't gone in. So I have a hard time selling just the print. So by the time I do what I do to them, it's really a upcycle painting. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But I still sell it cheaper than an original painting.
Well, since you mentioned pricing too, I want to
Okay.
talk about that. When you talk about selling half a dozen paintings, how are you pricing your work and how do you get 6 sales from the same person? Or do you have a system for pricing? Do you have a range? Do you know, how did you arrive at a price that moves paintings like that?
That was a good month. but because but what I found with the retirement home I'm talking about, I raised my prices when I went in there. And they sold better with me raising my prices. And I do my pricing by the square inch method. You know, I know I had first, because therefore you gotta remember I kept them for years, some of them, because I'm just too connected with them and I couldn't give them up. I'm too emotionally invested, I put it that way. Because all of my paintings are parts, chapters in my life. So you mentioned to me about having a body of work. My life is my body of work. So it's like no matter, even if I wanted to paint some landscapes or something, I could still fit that into my body of work because I'm going to put some people in there somewhere. But my body of work is my life. So it kind of I can tell a story about every painting I have. I can't tell no story about a flamingo, okay, except it's pink. But in the retirement home, if my pricing had been too inexpensive, I don't think they would have thought they were worth much. So I look at the going prices for the area for a certain size around here, and I do it by the square inch. And so the problem is at what point of the, like I start off like maybe at $2 because it said you're not a real artist unless you charge me over $2 a square inch. And I read that somewhere and I took it to heart. Okay, so I do that. I do it by the square inch and the size. And at that time, I wasn't bringing the price down for the size, like a 30 by 40 was like $3,000. And I had a couple of them and I sold them. And the other ones were, so I forgot how much that was. I think it's around $250 a square inch. That's what I was doing. But usually I try to stick around $2 to $225. But the dilemma for me for the longest, and I didn't have a website the whole time I was doing all that. I had no website. So this is all based on me reading. This is all pre-COVID too, you got to remember. So I was seeing call for artists and I was seeing exhibitions. Now I did another one where I sold like maybe 7 for the Sarasota Arts and Cultural Exchange. They have a lobby too. It's their lobby and you hang art in their lobbies. And then they have meetings in rooms off of the lobby. So people were coming through there and they saw the paintings and no one, there's no one handling it. They had my card and my name and they would call me or email me. It's how I did it there. But everyone I sold to knew me too, though. That is right there. It was no strangers that bought. So it's still my basic circle of people that I knew. The point is, friends don't buy your paintings. You have people who you think they want free or they want $50, $100, $200 or whatever. But I want that. But they'll say, can you make it bigger? My point is, you're not going to buy it at $200, make it bigger. It's going to have a bigger price on it,
Yeah, I think you've made a really good point. And artists, I think, if they start out that way, there's a validity to sometimes doing that where there's maybe a strategic giveaway of a certain piece or something you feel called to. Or for me, I give away certain paintings that are for charities. But I think that especially as you progress, it's
Mhm.
important to restrict the amount, even if you don't feel right always about charging, to restrict the amount of paintings that you give away and
Mhm.
even donate, because
Mhm.
for two reasons. One, it will hold you back and you'll find that you are working for trade, kind of like
Mhm.
why I can't work in bookstores, because I'll come home with 40,000 books and no paycheck.
Right. Right. I've worked at a bookstore. Yeah.
I think it's important to be aware that you've got to start acting like you're doing this for money if that's your goal.
Mhm.
And I think that it's important to get in the mindset of believing that your paintings are worth charging for and of valuing them and not stepping out of your own way. I know before the show, we talked about Marcus Sheridan and how on his episode, he was talking about pricing your work in a way that no matter what that price is, first
Mhm.
arrive at what you really need to charge for that piece, no
Mhm.
matter what your pricing formula is. And then second, to present that price in a way as if you are saying, even if you don't actually say it after the price, isn't that great? So
Yeah, I forgot
you're
that part.
presenting
Yeah.
it with confidence. And
Isn't
that,
that great?
I think when you give away your work too long or too many times, again, even if you have a charity, that's valid. But
Mhm.
you can't have all your work be to charities if you intend to also make a living at doing your paintings or your sculptures or whatever it is, your mixed media, that you get in the mindset of this, in order for me to present this gift to the world in a sustainable way, I deserve to be paid enough that it is valued, because perception, as you said, can be
Mhm.
inverse sometimes to price,
Mhm.
and that I can survive and continue to give this gift to the world.
I like that line that you just said, and that I can survive and keep doing what I'm doing and finding the joy and the wonder in what I'm doing. And I can't do that if I'm giving a piece of me. If I want to give something away, and I've done that, as a gift to someone, that's different. I want to do that, like to my yoga instructor or something. I remember I gave her, and she has it on her wall in a yoga studio. But don't don't say we both from Cleveland. You're gonna give me a break on this or something like that, because that's up to me, and that comes into I have difficulty with this too. Like now that I have a website, you have a price on there for your painting, but then you're in a gallery also, and the gallery is charging you a percentage of your painting. So all of your prices should be the same. That's the general opinion. So, but at that price, if they're up in their commission fee for where you're showing, say like from 45 to 50, you go into your website and change all of those prices so that you're still getting the same amount. Do you have any clarity on that?
Well, yeah, I think that it's important to maintain, for the sake of the gallery too, if you have gallery
Yes.
representation, the uniformity, so that people they're not tempted to circumvent the gallery because they believe they'll go to you and get that painting for 30% less, because it's disloyal to the gallery in a level, because they're providing all kinds of marketing on your behalf and
Mhm.
things that they're carrying the overhead for. So really what happens is it's important to maintain your prices at the gallery prices wherever you sell. Now, if you end up selling outside of the gallery, then that's okay, as long as you're not competing with the gallery. If
Mhm.
that painting you showed me with the women on it, the group of women,
Mhm. Mhm.
if you make multiples of that, it wouldn't really be cricket, as they say, to sell it
Uh,
for less out of your own gallery
right.
when you're selling versions of it, originals, at the gallery for the gallery price. So
Right. I could see that.
I think it's backwards in the sense of, instead of worrying that you're taking from your buyer because you are you are charging and getting the amount the gallery would get because there's that gap, and if you maintain your price, I think your fear is you're worrying about the integrity of getting that money yourself, when if you sold through the gallery, you would get less. But if I'm reading you right, but think of it this way, it's the other way around. When you sell through the gallery, you are actually taking a hit on what you make. And so that sacrifice, if you can look at it that way, that sacrifice that you take a sacrifice when you sell out of your gallery, because they are taking the overhead off your shoulders on promoting it for you and hanging it and all of those other things, the open hours and the public access. And so if you flip that on its head, I think it's easier to understand and explain if somebody asks you that question. Don't think of it like you're ripping off your person walking into your gallery. Think of it as there are reasons you will make that sacrifice when you show elsewhere, but the price has to stay the same.
Has to stay the same. And then that's good to know. And I do understand that scenario, but I'm also speaking of the scenario like it's the art center in town. So it's only up for 30 days. That's not a gallery. So It's up for 30 days. And so my prices are one thing on the website. I mean, I still have to deduct how much I had to pay to get into the show, the jury fees and the commission for them. So on that level, do you still keep the same price?
Well, which way is it? Is the price generally, you saying, is it higher in the art center?
If I add their 40% on for the 30-day art center.
Yeah. Whatever you're charging at the art center, I would make your price at home and consider, or your home gallery, right? Whether that's a gallery you own or out of your own personal studio. Think of it this way, okay? I have my own studio here, but I pay for maintenance on 3 domain names, which is several $100s a year, because I've got web hosting and forwarding with them and emails attached to them. My online course has its own server. All of those things incur fees that add up to a lot of overhead that I'm carrying. So yes, I think the price needs to stay the same across the board. It causes less confusion for your collectors. Right?
Right. But then it's only up for 30 days. Then you change your price back when you get once the show is over.
No, what I mean is if that painting is $500 in the art center, then it's $500 if you sell it out of your home.
Right.
And then
I got you. You said,
you keep your prices high.
Keep your prices
according
high.
to the venue outside, even if it's a 2-day show or a 2-month show, because the overhead that you have at home, or like I said, your own gallery, you're carrying that on your own.
It's the same thing. That's right.
You're keeping the lights on in your studio. You're supplying the website and all of the overhead. If you're managing your own website, that's your time.
Oh, I got you. I got you about that. I haven't heard that part.
That's my input. I've heard of the importance of keeping the prices across the board. If you have say you have a gallery that's in town and you're selling your paintings for 40% lower out of your own studio, you're probably going to get a call and they're going to say, you're messing up your algorithm of your pricing value because you're dropping your prices and you're lowering your equity in people's perception of the equity in your work.
There you go. I finally understood that then, because I have overhead at home also. So it should be the same as for the art center or whatever I raised it for them. So it should be the same across the board.
I think
I get that. I finally got that. Okay.
I think the key is to think in terms of not, I'm ripping off my customers who didn't have to go through the gallery, but I have to make sure if I'm selling it myself that I'm covering the overhead necessary to sell it, to maintain my own studio and my own business here and the website and everything that's attached to it that helped you sell it.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
You're making a sacrifice at the gallery. You're not ripping off your customers at home.
Thank you for that, Caroline.
It's all that overhead, baby.
Okay, I got you. So in essence, I guess it's what I'm saying is before COVID, there were more exhibitions. And so that's why I said that was a point in time. It was pre-COVID. And when COVID came, so I have a website now, and I do sell on Instagram, but I do that the same way. People are attracted to me also because of what my art says. But the main thing I learned from doing this with you, Caroline, is that that's another word everyone uses, secret sauce. You know, what my secret sauce is. And my secret sauce is telling my story. If I can get in front of a future collector and tell my story, collectors, I can sell my paintings.
Now, do you do that on your website? Do you have videos of you telling your stories?
Yes, a couple, 2 or 3, but I've got a whole lot of other stories that I've never told.
Because do you sell a lot on your website, or mostly right now in person?
No, that's funny. They don't come through they'll look. But so I think it's important to have it. They know it's there and they look. But I've been selling still on Facebook and Instagram. And
what's the difference? Are there videos on Instagram and Facebook?
Yes. And I put, you get those apps where you in situ, where you put your paintings in a room.
Yes.
And so they can visualize how it would look in their space. Because the woman up in Michigan I was talking about before, she says she has a Brenda wall. So she'll always, and then I do give discounts when collectors come back. Also.
Okay.
And the whole bit, 10 or 15%.
Okay, that was my question.
So,
how do you give a discount? How much? And
that's how I do that. And I tell them that. And she has a Brenda wall that she's trying to fill up as she gets bonuses and extra money and things like that. But I found her she found me on Instagram.
We talked about a lot of people mentioning layaway. If people buy online for you, do they make the purchase online? And if so, do you allow payments there? Or do they always come to you beyond your website to make the buy, which might mean that they're local?
No, not necessarily local. It still could be in Kansas. The people that have done that, they don't buy it online. They contact me personally.
How?
Email, or they know me or something. And they know me from IG. That for Instagram, they know me. Because I got people in Oklahoma and California. I know them because I've been developing a relationship with them online for some time.
That's it. The relationship is king, because
yes,
the time my listeners know this, there's an episode, I think it's episode 51, where there was an attempt to defraud me, and it was through Etsy. And so I'm still very leery of going outside of my system, my online shopping cart, or a gallery, in that it was the typical, I want to buy a painting, but can we switch to email? And then we did it, and they sent me a check, but they overpaid. And of course, I turned it into a podcast episode.
I get those emails, saying I want to buy my husband this for his anniversary, and you're in my price range of whatever it is, and could you do this and this? I just delete those now or whatever, because there's some kind of spam stuff going on. I don't do it. The people who I sell to online from my website, I have made contact and developed a relationship with them on Instagram or Facebook. So we have talked back and forth. So there's a trust level there. I think that's number one, that has to happen, because you don't just come out the blue and I don't know you and you say, you send me an email, say, I want to buy this painting. I don't trust you then. And I'm not going to lay away or install or anything.
You have to be very careful online. And if they're in a system like a shopping cart or Etsy, and they want to drop back to email, and they ask to step outside of the venue you're selling on, be very careful. If you don't know them, I'm going to tell my listeners to assume it is a fraudster.
Mm-hmm. A fraudster.
A fraud attempt. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when that person from Kansas then contacts you, how do you go about the payments? Is it money up front?
No, but sometimes she wants to do an installment, and she'll do it. But most times when people do that, the last 4 or 5 times, they'll send the whole thing.
And you know them, like you said.
Yeah, and they'll send the whole thing because maybe I'll say it too. Now, I don't know if that the guy we talked about who said say your price and that's it.
Yep.
He didn't mention anything about installments, did he?
No, he was talking about Marcus.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marcus was talking about public speaking at that time, but
That's right.
But he's a marketing professional, so he didn't cover that. But I think if anything is outside of driving distance, it's got to be money up front, unless you really know that person, you
Yes,
know
you
who you're
really
dealing
know
with.
that person. And I've swayed a couple of times about that, but it came through. And I said, "Oh Lord, here's my trusting self." And I knew the person, but she moved to she was in Colorado. That's when she was. So no, I do. It's not someone that I don't have any relationship with. We have a relationship, whether it's online or someone that I knew in person.
Right. And another thing for our listeners to know is not just waiting when you do make a sale. See, now if you use Etsy or another platform, a lot of them will hold the money for a little while first. Don't just assume if it clears, if the check clears, say they send you a cashier's check, which is also can be a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a check situation in any form, it's not just that 2 days or so to get the check to clear. It's going to be 10 days after that. If it's a fraudulent payment method, that it's going to get kicked back to the bank. So when I got a cashier's check from that buyer, I called the bank to verify, and because I was suspicious, and they said, no, do not cash that check. But what they told me was, had I cashed it, naturally my bank will hold it they'll give me, say, $200 upfront credit until 24 hours, and then they'll cash it. But after that, there's like a 10-day delay within which that 10-day delay is what will actually tell them if the check cleared. They're giving you the benefit of the doubt as the account holder of the bank.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, if it gets kicked back to them, they will now come back to you 10 days later and say, Brenda, that check didn't clear. You need to give us back that money. And if you spent it, or if they think that you knew that it wasn't going to clear, they can come after you for fraud.
No, I did not know that.
So it's important. And I think it's episode 51. It's right before my subsequent interview with the former director of cybercrime at the FBI in Arizona. Yeah. And he talks about this topic too. But 51 was about my experience in somebody trying to defraud me. So that's important to know. If you're going to sell online, it's best to go through a shopping cart system, PayPal, something that's going to protect you from these kind of scammers who will say, I'll send your cashier's check. I have 2 cashier's checks on my wall framed, and people say to me, oh, is that your first sale? And I tell them, no, that's the first time somebody tried to defraud me online. And I turned it into a podcast episode. And the funniest thing, so it could help my listeners, funniest thing about it, if you look at them, same check number. They sent it twice. Because I questioned the validity of the check, and I said, I can't work with you. And instead of rectifying the situation or proving they weren't fraudulent, they did one last ditch effort, and they did it again and mailed me another check, same amount, same check number.
Same amount, same check number.
Yep. Obviously fraud. So I have it's on my, I'll put it in the show notes. It's hysterical.
No, I'll have to remember that.
Yep.
I'll have to remember that.
And I have a fraud alert checklist on my website. You can find it downloadable from episode 51 so that you can see the things I encountered as I was discovering that I was being frauded, how I figured it out, and tips to protect yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for coming on the show. I'm so glad I got to meet you. I love your inspirational work. You're like this firestorm of creativity. I would like you to wrap us up with what's on the horizon for you and what's your best advice for our listeners to get the message of their work out and get the work out there.
I'm going to start with the last thing that you said about getting the message of your art out there. It's finding your niche and finding your people, because you could have 58,000 followers online, and you could have 100,000 likes, but those are likes and those are followers. They are not all your people. You have to find the people that resonate with you by showing what's in your heart and what's in your mind and what's in your body. And by listening to you, because listening to yourself, and I say listening to you, because I've noticed, I thought about this as I was preparing for the show with you, is that when I first started painting, I think I was looser because I had not watched so many other people paint and think, well, maybe I should be painting like that. Maybe I should do this like that. Or, and then you told me about the eyes today. I have one painting up there where one eye is up there and one eye is down there, but there's a reason it's like that too. So I don't necessarily have to go back and put my eyes back up there. But the point is to trust yourself. And I found from watching Facebook and Instagram specifically, is that you lose, and I may have heard this on your show also, about the mistakes you're making end up being part of your style and part of your honesty of who you are and how you paint. And if you love what you're doing and your work resonates with a certain niche of people, what more could you want? Everybody can't paint and don't want to paint a flamingo.